The water's squirting up from the bottom. You'll see it in the back corner.
Oh, yeah. Do we know if it's fresh or salt?
Don't know.
For over 200 years, Oak Island has kept its secret buried. At 120 feet down, the drill didn't just stop. It found something. Not because of equipment failure, not because of flooding, not because the island pushed back the way it always has. This time, it was different. The drill hit something solid, something that doesn't belong at that depth unless it was placed there deliberately, centuries ago. Up on the surface, Rick Lagina stood still as the radio crackled to life. There's something down here. Not a theory, not a signal buried in data, something real. For the first time in 13 seasons, the team had reached a depth no modern borehole in the Oak Island program had ever touched. And right there, at the exact point where every clue, every artifact, every scan has been pointing, something was waiting. 2 centuries of searching, 13 seasons of the most advanced treasure hunt ever conducted. And one man who believed since he was 11 years old that this island was hiding something real. Now, at 120 feet, that belief is no longer a theory. It's a discovery. So, hit like and subscribe, because what they've just found at the bottom of that borehole is about to change everything we thought we knew about Oak Island. The burden of 2 centuries. 200 years is enough to wear down almost anything. Passions fade. Mysteries lose their urgency. What once obsessed people slowly gets labeled as unsolvable and quietly forgotten. Most searches don't last this long. Even the serious ones, the ones backed by money, history, and real effort, eventually collapse under the weight of doubt and exhaustion. Belief runs out, resources dry up, and the search ends. But Oak Island never followed that rule. For 229 years, since 3 teenage boys spotted a strange depression in the ground back in 1795 and decided to dig, this island has done something extraordinary. It has offered just enough proof that something real lies beneath, only to defeat every group that tried to uncover it. That cycle has repeated again and again. Engage, invest, fail. In the 1860s, powerful investors arrived with serious funding and advanced engineering for their time. In the early 1900s, expeditions pushed deeper, losing men to flooding, yet still couldn't reach the bottom. By the mid-20th century, better machines led to even more complex failures. And across the decades, different owners took control of the island, each convinced they would succeed where all others had failed. None of them did. The island took everything they brought, and returned only fragments. Just enough to prove something was there, never enough to explain what it was. Rick Lagina is simply the latest to take on that challenge, and he's always known it. As an 11-year-old in 1965, he read about Oak Island in Reader's Digest. Even then, the same pattern was clear: evidence, effort, failure. But where others saw impossibility, Rick saw something else. He believed the problem wasn't the mystery, it was the method. Now, more than 50 years later, with his brother's support, modern technology, and 13 seasons of collected data, Rick has been quietly building that right approach, piece by piece. What sets Rick apart isn't just money. Others had that. It's not just technology. Today's tools are more advanced than ever, but tools alone don't solve mysteries. What makes Rick different is how he handles failure, because Oak Island hasn't gone easy on him. Across 13 seasons, the team has faced setback after setback, promising leads that led nowhere, boreholes that flooded before reaching their target, equipment failures at the worst possible moments, theories that seemed convincing, but turned out incomplete. And yet, the island followed its familiar pattern, revealing just enough to keep them going, while hiding just enough to stop them from finishing. Rick never treated those moments as defeat. His team describes his patience as something rare, not forced, not fake, not someone hiding frustration. Real patience. The kind that comes from absolute belief in the end goal, where every obstacle isn't failure, but information. A flooded borehole? That's insight into the island's water system. An artifact with more questions than answers? That sharpens the historical timeline. An unexplained anomaly? That narrows the search. What looked like slow, incremental progress over 13 seasons? was actually something much bigger. Rick wasn't just searching. He was building a map, not just of the land, but of the mystery itself. A complete picture of what lies beneath, where it is, and why it's there. Piece by piece, season by season, with the belief that eventually, the picture would become clear enough to act on. That moment came with one decision: 120 feet. No single clue pointed there directly, but everything combined, the geophysical data, historical analysis, borehole footage, and confirmed tunnel mapping, all led to the same conclusion. Previous boreholes had reached 90, 95, even 104 feet. Each one found something important. Each one hinted the real target was deeper. Rick stopped looking at them individually. He started seeing them as a pattern, a depth profile, and that pattern pointed to one number: 120 feet. So, Rick made the call. And when the drill reached that depth, it finally hit what 2 centuries of searching had been leading toward. But getting there wasn't simple. Reaching 120 feet required a level of preparation no previous attempt had needed. The Oak Island drilling program had been evolving season after season, going deeper, adapting, improving. Special casing systems were used to stabilize the fragile upper layers. High-capacity pumps managed constant water intrusion. Advanced drill designs reduced the risk of collapse in underground voids. But at 120 feet, everything changed. The deeper they went, the more complex the challenges became. Heavier drill strings, greater torque pressure, and the growing influence of the island's tidal water system, especially near the flood tunnels and whatever existed beyond them. This wasn't just another drill. This was the deepest, most calculated move in Oak Island history. And for the first time in 200 years, the island didn't stop them. It answered. The drilling engineer spent 2 full weeks preparing the plan. When he finally sat down with Rick, Lagina, and Marty, he didn't dramatize anything. He laid it out exactly as it was. These are the challenges. These are the safeguards. Here's where things can go wrong. And here's how we respond if they do. When he finished, Rick asked just one question. What are the chances we actually make it to 120 feet without losing the hole? The engineer paused, thinking it through carefully. If everything in this plan is executed correctly, about 70%. 70%. Which also meant a 30% chance this attempt, the deepest and most ambitious borehole in the modern search, would fail before ever reaching its target. A 30% chance that all the preparation, the equipment, the time, and the investment would end in another setback. Rick turned to Marty. Marty gave a small nod. That was it. Approval, financial and operational, aligned in a single moment. We drill, Rick said. The operation began under a typical Nova Scotia sky. Gray, cool, unpredictable. A day that offered no hints about what was coming. The upper layers were handled with the precision of a team that had done this many times before. They moved through disturbed ground from past digs, past the void at 53 feet that earlier borehole cameras had revealed, navigated the partial flood tunnel at 71 feet, this time controlling the water flow before it could spiral into disaster. Each depth was called out over the radio. Rick stood at the surface, eyes fixed on the data, tracking every detail, matching the drill's behavior against the mental model he had been building for 13 seasons. At 88 feet, something changed. The core samples brought up worked timber. Not the first time they'd seen it, but here, at this exact location, it meant something more. It confirmed they were exactly where they needed to be. At 97 feet, another signal came in. The ground-penetrating radar operator spoke immediately. Strong anomaly at approximately 115 feet. Defined structure. Not natural. Not natural, and it was sitting just below their current position. The drill kept going. From 97 to 113 feet, everything matched expectations. Dense, stable ground. Predictable, controlled. Each core sample reinforced the picture. Then, at 113 feet, the material changed. The geologist didn't hesitate. "This isn't natural," he said. "This is fill. Someone put this here, on purpose. A deliberate layer, a seal. Whatever they built, it's below this, about 7 feet down." At 119 feet, 8 inches, close enough to 120 that the difference didn't matter, everything shifted. The resistance disappeared. The drill suddenly dropped a couple of inches. The vibration changed. Anyone experienced in drilling knew instantly what that meant. The contractor grabbed the controls, steady but alert, and keyed the radio. "Rick, the bit just dropped into a void. I've lost resistance below 120 feet. A pause. "There's open space down here." The camera didn't go down immediately. That decision was Rick's. The drilling had disturbed the water inside the borehole, and visibility would be poor. If they rushed it, they might miss something critical. Better to wait. Better to see clearly. Whatever was down there had been hidden for centuries. It could wait one more night. Rick didn't really sleep. He sat with the data, the anomaly at 115 feet, the artificial fill between 113 and 119, the confirmed void at 120. Piece by piece, he built the clearest picture possible of what lay below, before the camera ever confirmed it, and everything aligned. The depth matched the pattern from previous boreholes. The location matched the convergence of all their evidence. The fill layer suggested something intentional, something sealed off to prevent discovery. By morning, the theory was complete. Now it just needed proof. At 6:47 a.m., the camera began its descent. Rick stood in front of the monitor. The entire team gathered, everyone who had contributed to the season, watching the moment they had all been working toward. The camera moved down steadily. The upper layers looked familiar, disturbed soil, the timber at 88 feet, the transition zone below. Visibility was clearer than usual. At 113 feet, the camera entered the fill layer. It looked different immediately, denser, more compact, clearly placed. Not natural, not random, intentional. At 119 feet, that layer ended. The camera crossed into the void. What came next? No one in that room would ever forget. The tight borehole suddenly opened. The camera's light reached farther. The space expanded. Even the sound changed. As the camera slowly rotated, it began revealing the space below. Section by section, wall by wall. A chamber, not a natural cavity. A constructed space, buried 120 feet beneath Oak Island. The walls came into view, stone, cut and fitted with precision. The structural engineer watching didn't hesitate. This is masonry, not random rock, not collapse, not nature. This was built, carefully, deliberately, by human hands. The ceiling design confirmed what the team's archaeologist had been suggesting for the past 2 seasons. A corbelled structure, each layer of stone slightly extending inward until the final capstone sealed the top. A method seen in medieval European construction, now appearing exactly where they had predicted it might. As the camera completed its slow rotation, the full scale of the space became clear. Roughly 6 meters across, about 2.5 meters high, and perfectly preserved. No collapse, no flooding, no visible damage. A sealed chamber, dry, intact, and hidden 120 feet beneath Oak Island for centuries. And it wasn't empty. Along the far wall sat 4 containers, wooden, reinforced with iron. The camera couldn't capture every detail, but their shape and size left little doubt. These were storage chests, substantial ones. Next to them, several wrapped bundles. The material looked like treated leather or vellum, exactly the kind used in medieval times to protect important documents. And then, in the center of it all, a flat stone object, a tablet, placed deliberately, almost ceremonially, as if it was meant to be seen first. The historian was already on his feet. "The tablet," he said, pointing at the screen. "Can we center on that?" The operator adjusted the camera, inch by inch, until the stone filled the frame. Light struck it at an angle, just enough to reveal markings. Carved, deep, intentional, familiar. The same style of inscription the team had encountered in earlier findings on the island. It took nearly 20 minutes to refine the image, adjusting angles, enhancing contrast, until the text became clear enough to study. Then, the historian worked. 40 minutes with reference materials, 40 minutes applying the cipher system they had spent the entire season developing. When he finally spoke, the room had gone completely silent. "It's a Templar cipher," he said, "translated through Latin." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I'd want full verification before confirming every detail, but the core message is unmistakable." Another pause. "It says, 'The treasury of those who kept the faith, entrusted to the earth until the world was ready to receive it.'" No one moved. At the back of the room, Rick Lagina stepped forward. He stood in front of the screen, staring at the inscription, something carved into stone by people who believed that, one day, someone would find it and understand. He didn't speak immediately. Then, quietly, "The world was ready. A beat. We just had to get here." The valuation process took 4 weeks. There was no rush, no shortcuts, no excitement allowed to interfere with precision. Experts were brought in, specialists in medieval artifacts, coins, manuscripts, and authentication. The chamber itself was accessed using a controlled caisson system, designed to preserve both the structure and everything inside it. When the 4 chests were finally opened, it was done under strict archaeological supervision. Every item documented, photographed, analyzed, only then valued. The contents told a clear story. Gold and silver coins from multiple regions, multiple eras. Gemstones of exceptional quality. Not random wealth, but a collection built intentionally over time. There were ceremonial objects, finely crafted jewelry, metalwork that reflected the highest levels of medieval European artistry. And then, the documents. Those were evaluated separately. Historians approached them with a kind of cautious awe, using language reserved only for truly rare discoveries. The bundles contained manuscripts, preserved in remarkable condition, protected for centuries by the sealed environment of the chamber. Early analysis suggested something extraordinary, not just valuable, historically significant, possibly world-changing. The initial estimate came in $300 million, and even that number was conservative, because when it comes to documents of this kind, their true value often increases as their significance becomes fully understood. Rick received the number the same way he had handled everything else, quietly. No celebration, no spectacle, just stillness. He made one call, to his father. The conversation was private, but later Rick described it as the most important call of his life. "I told him we found it," he said. His father asked if he was sure. "I told him I was," and then we just sat there. Neither of us said anything for a while, because we didn't need to. At 120 feet below Oak Island, Rick Lagina found what 200 years of searching had been leading toward. Not because of luck, not because of better funding, or better tools, or television support, but because of something simpler and rarer: patience. The kind of patience this island demands. Across 13 seasons, he turned every failure into data, every clue into part of a larger map, until finally, the map was complete, and when everything pointed to one depth, one location, he trusted it, and went deeper than anyone ever had. The message on the tablet said it best: entrusted to the earth until the world was ready. 2 centuries of searching, 13 seasons of effort, and one 11-year-old boy who read about a mystery and never let it go. The treasure is worth $300 million, but the belief that made it possible, that's what made it real. Oak Island didn't just hide its secret, it waited for someone patient enough to deserve it. Subscribe, because what happens next, as the world begins to understand what was found beneath Oak Island, is the most important chapter of this story, and you don't want to miss it.